We're going to talk about Goto Special. Goto Special allows you to find comments, constants, and formulas, blank cells. It also allows you to select the current region, select the current array, find all the objects on your worksheet, find differences that exist in row and columns compared to the active cell, find precedence and dependence, find the last cell on the worksheet. It allows you to select the visible cells, find cells that are conditionally formatted, and find cells that contain data validation rules. So I have a worksheet with hodgepodge of all kinds of stuff stuck in here. We're going to make some sense of it by using Goto Special. Now, Goto Special works similarly to other functionality in that it'll find whatever you're looking for in the selected range, and it could be selected non-contiguous ranges for that matter, or by default, if you only have one cell selected, it'll find what you're directing it to look for by looking in the entire worksheet. So I've taken a picture of the Goto Special dialog box, which can be found by going to the Home tab, left-clicking the Find and Select command in the editing group, and then left-clicking Goto Special. That, however, is not the way we're going to call it up. I'm going to close that. The way we're going to call it up is to press F5 and then left-click Special. That's just a little quicker. The good thing about comments is you can hide them. The bad thing about comments is you can hide them because when you hide them, you can't find them unless you use the Goto Special dialog box, which defaults to looking for comments. When I left-click OK, I say I have 3 comments in that range that contains a lot of other content. What you can do then is style the comments using a formatting, so now you can find the cells that contain comments a lot easier. The next couple of options, Goto Constants and Formulas, allow you to, 1, troubleshoot and audit your own spreadsheets. Maybe what's better than that is if you get a spreadsheet from somebody else, it allows you to visually map it out by first finding constants, F5 Special. I can look for constants, like I said, in a range or on the entire worksheet. Left-clicking OK, Excel has found for me every place that there is a constant. Now we can select some other formatting to apply. And the nice thing about this is, this enables you to map out the worksheet, but if you want to get rid of the formatting you've applied later on, just go to the constants again and take the formatting fill, in this case it's a yellow fill, away from those cells. F5, Special. When I'm looking for constants, I also get the option, and I didn't change or deselect any of these checkboxes, to look for numbers, text, logicals, or errors. Now, since I had them all checked, Goto Special selected all of those. Now, numbers are self-explanatory, as is text. Errors are when your cells contain errors. But logicals are these values, true and false. Those are actually text fields as well. It's the words true and the words false. And that actually, F5, has more to do really with formulas. When I clear these checkboxes other than logicals and left-click OK, I also have formulas that are producing some logicals. The point is, logicals is referring to a true or false result from a formula. Or in the case of constants, it's just the words true or false. F5 again, I've selected cell A1, so it's going to look through the entire worksheet for formulas in any way, shape, or form they are found. And now I can highlight or fill those a different color. And I can visually see which cells are manually input or hard-coded, are constants, and which cells are derived by formula. Cell G7 might come as a surprise to somebody that might first look at this and figure that all of the sales that are listed in quarter 4 are hard-coded or constants, but one of them actually is a formula. F5 Special, go to blanks. Blanks, you get a sort of an interesting result. Even though I had one single cell selected, when I chose go to blanks, it didn't go to all of the blanks in the entire worksheet. It went to all the blank cells, and I'm going to fill those cells yet a different color, that are in the region of the worksheet that contain formatting or other content other than objects. Left-clicking to deselect the blanks. This will make more sense when we get to one of the other selection choices. I'm going to left-click, go to Special Picture because I lost some of that. The current region. I'm going to left-click and select a cell in a region that contains some content. F5, go to Special, Current Region, and left-click OK, and it selects the same thing that you would enable yourself to select if you press Control-A, which is actually probably a quicker way to do it. And pressing Control-A again actually selects the entire worksheet, which you can also select by doing that, by the way. Current array. I have an array function that's part of a data table. We're going to go into data tables in other movies, but the Goto current array, F5 special, allows you to select the cells that are part of an array function. And a data table contains an array formula, and you can tell that by the curly brackets that are on either side of the formula. F5, go to Objects, left-clicking. The objects are my ugly-looking chart, the three shapes, and the picture of the Goto Special dialog box. I can then tab between these objects, or Shift-tab to go to the other direction to select the objects. You might want to select the different objects to format them. Right now the chart is selected, and I can go to the Design, Layout, and Format tabs that affect the visual display of the chart. I can go to the picture, which is the picture of the Goto Special dialog box, and format that as well. And the same thing is true with shapes. I'm going to select a row, and even though a row is selected, or a column, in a second we'll do a column, there is an active cell that when you select a row is the first cell in that row. I can tab my way to another selected cell, and so now I have row 10 selected, and E10 is the active cell, which you can see that by looking at the name box. F5 go to Special, Row Differences. We'll make a comparison between all of the cells in that row that are different than the active cell, using my fill again, and then left-clicking off of that. E10 is different than the other cells in that row because it contains a link to two other cells, E8 and E9. That's not true with all the other cells on that row. Now, it doesn't mean that all the other cells are the same. It just means that all the other cells are different than what is in E10. And you can do the same thing with columns. I'm selecting column G, tabbing down to cell G7, which I already know contains a formula, because we filled the cells that have formulas with a blue fill, and we filled the cells with constants with a yellow fill. F5, Special, Column Differences, OK, and using the same fill color now, I see all the other cells in that column are different than what is in cell G7. This can be a nice auditing tool to make sure that your cells that are supposed to contain the same formulas actually do contain the same formulas. Now sometimes, and I've gotten spreadsheets, worksheets that have this on occasion, there'll be a whole bank of numbers on a schedule. Summaries here, summaries there, groups of numbers here, groups of numbers there. And folks sometimes need to abstract from all of those array of numbers a total value or some mathematical result that needs to be derived from this array of numbers. What's difficult to do is to figure out where those numbers came from. Now you can press F2 and I can see the four cells. They're selected for me. But if I go to one of them, I lose that visibility of the other cells that feed into, in this case, cell J17. Go to Special. I can select all the precedents that's feeding into that cell, and again, format them. And now I can visually see which cells make up the value that's in J17. And when I select one of those cells, which actually is derived by the values in two other cells, I don't lose the visibility of all the other cells that make up that value that's in J17. This is another useful tool that you'll find handy at times. So we can also go the other direction. I have a value in F7, F5 Special, that I can trace the cells that are dependent upon that value, either the direct dependence or all levels, which is what I'm going to select, left-clicking OK, and going back to our fill colors again, selecting yet a different fill color. I can see that there are a number of dependent cells. These two, this one, and these three are all dependent upon the value that's in F7. So tracing dependence and precedence can help you audit your formulas and again map out and determine where the values are coming from or where they're going. F5 special. I mentioned when we selected and went to the blanks that there was going to be another option that was related to the result that we got. And it's this one, last cell. I'm going to left click OK. And the last cell is the cell that was the lower cell to the far right, or the lower right hand corner of the region that contains our content. It's that region that Goto Special looks into to find the blank cells. You can also get to that cell, and I'm going to left click off of it, by pressing Control End. The next Goto Special option has to do with going to the visible cells. Now, many times people have the necessity to copy the results of a subtotal, but when you select the region that contains a subtotal and go to Control-C, Control-V in this case, is what I did, you not only get the subtotals, but you get all the data that made up the subtotal. I'm going to delete that, select the region that contains the subtotal, F5 Special, Visible Cells Only, and now Goto Special has selected only the visible cells. So when I Control-C, and you can see there are different segments of what it is that I'm going to copy, because there's multiple regions that contain the marquee. Left-clicking a target, right-clicking, pasting, I now can paste the subtotal results. I'm going to escape out of that and delete that. And I'm going to show you that you can customize the ribbon or the Quick Access toolbar, select all commands. The Select Visible Cells Only command will do the same thing that we just did. Once you select a region, you can left-click this once you add the command to the Quick Access toolbar or to the ribbon and select the visible cells and just the visible cells. If you do a lot of that, you might want to add that to your Quick Access toolbar or to your ribbon. And there's two bits of functionality that visually it's difficult to see what cells contain. One, conditional formatting, F5, left-click conditional formats. I can see that that region of cells contains conditional formatting. Now, some of these cells show the result of the conditional formatting rule because they're formatted using a red fill with a dark red font. But other than that, I sure couldn't tell by looking at this which cells contain the conditional formatting rules and which ones don't. I'm going to left-click off of that. And the same thing is true with data validation. And what's nice about this is, I want to left-click OK. I now have a data validation rule area that's selected. I'm going to select one of the cells in that region, go back to the Goto Special dialog box, and I can select, which is what I did, all of the data validation that exists on this worksheet. Or once I found or identified a region that contains a data validation rule, I can determine which cells contain the same rule. In this case, the result is the same. It's one data validation rule that's contained on this region on the worksheet. But if you have multiple regions with different data validation rules, you can identify those regions separately. So that's the Goto Special dialog box. We first found some comments. We used the functionality to find constants and formulas, which we can tweak for finding numbers, text, logicals, and or errors. We had Goto Special search for blanks that's in the region that contains our data or formatting. We selected the current region. We selected the current array. We selected all of the objects on the worksheet. We found differences between cells that were selected and the rows and the columns that they were in. We traced precedence and we traced dependence. We went to the last cell on the worksheet. We selected only the visible cells, and we found regions that contain conditional formats and data validation rules.